Has anybody heard from Mandy?
I have not. Hi, Jonathan.
How's everybody doing?
Very good, thank you.
Great.
I'm gonna give it a little bit for Mandy to join us. I just texted her.
We got quite a storm coming. Very big ice event, apparently. Just went to a warning, I think.
I hope everybody got their milk and bread.
Yes. There was no bread in Ingalls last night, I'll tell you that. I stopped on my way home, so.
I still don't understand milk and bread, but I mean, no matter how many years I live in the South, I still don't get the obsession with picking that up. But
There's Mandy. Hi, Mandy.
Hey, Mandy. Well, I guess we can go ahead and get started. I guess I need to know I'm very new to this, so allow me some grace. We're gonna start, it's 1:02 on January 23rd. For those of you, I know everybody on the committee knows who I am, but for those of you on the call here that don't know, I'm the newly selected chair of the Finance Committee, Stephanie Gottler, and the new chair of the board. And this is our Finance Committee meeting, and I just want to remind everybody that we can't talk about confidential stuff in open session here, like legal matters, personnel matters, and trying to think of what else. What else am I forgetting, Trishka?
Well, there's contractual matters as well. That's part of our executive session today.
Yes, contractual matters. Yeah, so I think that's it. There'll be no voting in this. This is just a committee meeting, so it's a little bit different than the board meeting. This is our chance to discuss the financials and figure out how we may recommend the whole board at the board meeting with action. So I guess do you want to start, Tom, on the student fees? Or I know there was like
I can do that.
That was an issue, and I know I mentioned this before about actually breaking it down a little bit so that families knew exactly what those fees were going toward, I think would be helpful. So I wanted to see where we're at with that and explaining that to families.
Yeah, we will be, as you know, we passed this policy last July, and we kind of slow walked rolling it out till we could kind of give parents some time to get used to the idea. So there's 4 fees across Green, and before I get into those, as Copper has become our finance team, Scott from Copper, myself, Susan Markford, Tommy Barnwell, and Renee Cutts have worked very closely on how to implement our school fees through My School Bucks. So there'll be another communication coming out, and we're going to give, we're complying and aligning with the communication we sent out in the fall about student fees. Green is still kind of paying for the transaction fees. We'll probably create a sunset for that before the end of the year, with enough time for parents to kind of pay the fees ahead of time. Renee does a great job. She's our office manager at the middle school. She and Scott have reviewed the process she's created. So she's working with each office manager to implement this through the My School Bucks platform. Tommy's probably our guru internally on My School Bucks, and is also the one that receives and determines any waiving of fees or half price of fees based on families' participation in the National School Lunch Program. So he's the only one that sees those and lets us know whether the request is approved. Beyond that, they can always appeal that, but generally that's how it goes. So there'll be more communication coming out with that. Renee's doing a great job. Schools are in a little different level. Obviously, these fees affect each campus a little differently based on what they offer, but we just have a general basic $25 school dues that would cover special events, guest speakers, celebration, grade level, end of the year activities, just the basic school dues fees that covers all the incidentals that happen across a school year. We have our tech fee, which is only $60, and that covers only grades 3 through 12. This was a fee when I arrived 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago, was a fee that was collected. We're reinstating it this year. As you know, we're a STEM school, so all our kids take home a Chromebook, grades 3 through 12. So this is really just a help offset that cost. You know, we ensure sometimes we're able to get 2 or 3 years out of Chromebooks. They're probably $250 to $300 each with the case and all. So this just helps to offset that cost to Green. The other two are really extracurricular. One is $75 for clubs and activities and things like that. And the other is a sports fee, an athletics fee of $150. All of these fees, as we kind of came to the dollar amount on them, we talked especially to our athletic director and talked about what was fair. We know that this doesn't cover the cost of a lot of these activities, but it helps offset the cost. I don't anticipate a change in those dollar amounts for next school year with the kind of elimination of Green paying the transaction fees. I think there'll be enough of a little bump on that, but that we will wait till we give parents and families adequate time to get caught up and ensure that their dues and fees are caught up by the end of the year. So those are the 4 fees we have. I think some schools are really effective at this. Some are still needing a little support, but putting Renee at the point on that is going to really help our office managers. And Renee knows that it's right because Scott was able to review that process with her. So I do think that it's a significant improvement. Again, this was late in the game. We knew it was a bit of a surprise, but I do think that the goal eventually is to get to a place where we're cashless. The biggest problem in schools is when you have to count cash and deposit cash and everything, whereas My School Bucks gives us an easier way for parents to pay. So that's typically how Greenville County does it. That's typically how most schools do it. So we're trying to move to that place where we can be completely cashless. So that's the update on the school on dues fees.
Thank you, Tom. Now I have a question. Is the something like the athletic fee, for example, is that going to be charged to all students or just students participating in sports?
No, clubs and athletics are only based on the participation of students. If you remember, we contemplated this over the summer, didn't want to have a general activities fee, but only pay as you go. So it is not only the school dues and the tech fee are applied generally across the schools, but clubs, activities, and sports are only to participants, and all the fees would be considerate of ability to pay. So if parents are struggling, we'll find no one will get denied access to those extracurricular activities if they're unable to make payment. So that's been communicated as well.
Great, thank you so much.
And if I remember correctly, sorry, Mandy, go ahead.
It's okay, you go ahead, Trishka.
I was just saying, if I remember correctly, we had compared our fees to Greenville County fees, and I want to say some of the other surrounding districts, and ours were comparable, and in a very similar price range for fees.
Yeah, the best, Dawn is on the call. She's probably the best person to speak to that. She has 2 kids in middle school and high school, so she can we vetted it across their website, and also Dawn was able to see that, we actually do better than the general schools because they actually even add supply charges for some higher level sciences and math, right, Dawn? Yeah, so that we don't charge for anything that's instructional.
Thank you.
Tom, can you just very high level explain, like you said, the costs of the clubs and activities or the costs of the sports? Like, what do you mean by that? Like, can you just break that down a little bit?
I'll try. It might mean, as it gets collected, it might mean the registration. There are times where to be a national honor society, there's registration fees and things like that. It also helps to offset the stipend that either the coach or the activity leader gets, because we believe that it's important that if a staff member is doing something extracurricular, they should get a stipend for that. So that's something that helps those fees offset. And in some places, it's actually helping to offset rental of practice fields or gymnasiums.
Thank you.
Yep. Anything else on that, Stephanie?
I'm good if everybody else is good.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I guess, Chance, were you gonna do the budget status update?
Yeah. Jonathan has our fiscal to date, July 2025 through our December 2025 first half of the fiscal year budget to actual schedule. Jonathan, are you able to do a screen share?
Let's see.
Maybe restricted in this call, but if it is, can we unrestrict it, please?
Make sure I've got.
Okay, great. And just to update about a couple things, I did receive an email from the auditors this past week that our consolidated fiscal 25, just so everyone knows, each of the individual charters gets their own individual audit, and there's also a consolidated audit. So the consolidated audit is done. Jonathan, I believe Ken is going to get that over to us next couple of days. We'll have that. Ensure that the fiscal 24 and fiscal 25 both consolidated audits and all the individual audits are posted online. And let's dive in, Jonathan. We'll start talking about our July 2025 through our December 2025 fiscal year to date budget to actuals.
That sounds fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, starting off, so we came in significantly over budget with our local funding, and just to make note of that, 11.6 million of that was recorded due to the charter school system of accounting is modified accrual accounting. And so
yeah, let me explain that, Jonathan, just so everybody's clear.
Please.
So for charter school accounting, which is the modified accrual basis of accounting, which we keep our books exactly as we submit them via the trial balance over to the auditors. A couple of things are different than standard basis accounting. One of the big ones being that when there's a bond issuance, that's other sources and uses more or less shown as revenue. And then when there are large capital expenditures, those are shown as expenditures. So that being said, we had a bond issuance in fiscal 26. And what Jonathan is saying is the amount of that bond issuance is technically, from a modified accrual standard of accounting, is considered an other sources and uses income item. It's not factored into our net income available for debt service. So it's not part of our covenant calculation. However, because in a modified accrual basis of accounting, we wouldn't show our capital outlay as an asset on the balance sheet. Is shown as an expenditure in the statement of revenue and expenses. So that being said, that's why our other local revenue. Now that's also offset down in our lower section. We'll see in just a little bit by the actual amount of the building that was purchased as part of that capital outlay. So that's why our local funding looks, if you look at it, it looks significantly over budget, but a large portion of that, again, about 11.6, Jonathan, is due to the bond issuance, which when everyone, if anyone goes into the consolidated audit, you'll be able to see that on that governmental income, governmental section of that income statement, you'll see how bond issuances, the total amount of it is considered other sources and uses revenue for purposes of modified accrual basis accounting. So no, the school did not get, 11 point, that's not an $11.6 million revenue item we can utilize for net income available for debt service covenant calculation. So
That's right.
that being said, we were fairly close budget to actual for the first half of our fiscal year, Jonathan, correct, in our local funding?
Yep, that's exactly what I was going to say. Is bringing out the 11.6, we're still very near to our budget,
Very
if not a little bit over.
Okay. Next, we have our state funding. Couple things on our state funding, just so I always like to go over this because I want to make sure that, because it looks as if you look at this, we're $2.2 million off in our state funding. Well, if that's the first half of the year, you would really, if you double that, it's looking like $4.5 million off. That's not really accurate. So the first couple months of the fiscal year for a charter school are funded. So July and August of 2025 were funded based on our prior year fiscal 135-day count. So when there is an increase in terms of the overall enrollment that we had at the start of this fiscal year, we don't get funded for that until September. The 5-day count occurs. And once that 5-day count occurs, we start from September through December funded on our 5-day count numbers. We most recently had a 45-day count. And at that 45-day count, that will adjust our January through April revenue. And then our 135-day count will adjust our May and June this fiscal year. And then again, July and August of next fiscal year. So that being said, we had a fairly significant revenue increase or enrollment increase for fiscal 26 compared to fiscal 25. It was not where we budgeted. There, we had a significant enrollment miss. However, it was, I believe, our fiscal 24 in fiscal year 24, 135-day count came in at under 2,700. And our 5-day count was 2923, roughly 2923. And Jonathan, I believe our current enrollment figure is slightly above 2940. Is that correct?
That's right, 2946.
2946. So 5-day 2923, 45-day was roughly 2948 ADM, average daily membership, and currently at the moment enrollment is 2946. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So again, 100. We had budgeted off of 3110, so it is an increase in enrollment. There was an enrollment miss. Therefore, we are going to have an enrollment or a miss in our state funding, which has led to some of the cuts that were necessary. So that's our state funding overview. Let's move forward to federal, Jonathan.
All right. Yep. So as far as federal funds go, because of the timing of the year, end of 2025, beginning of 2026 is when we're starting to see the federal claims IDEA titles 1 through 4 be approved, and so we're able to begin claiming these funds. So through December, we were able to claim just over $500,000 in federal grant money, and we still have about $327,000 in approved claims or approved grants that we can claim as far as the funds are expended according to the grants.
Right.
And
so one of that is certainly difficult at times is that we have expended, we've had expenditures that were qualified for us to be able to claim under these various federal grants. However, we weren't able to claim them until recently. So we will see that cash come in fairly soon because of these claims that we've done. So I believe, Jonathan, we're talking about a little over $500,000 in federal claims that we've done recently.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Great. So we should see if our USDA reimbursements that we're getting, along with, we have an additional, I think you said maybe around 300 or so thousand in federal claims. We'll see. I believe we've anticipated on the fiscal year, about a little over $1.4 million in our budgeted, what we've looked at for our federal funding. I think we're going to come in excess of that, which is great. So those are really our
Absolutely.
revenue big ticket items for the first half of the fiscal year. Let's move
Yep.
forward to our expenditures.
Absolutely. So as far as salaries and benefits go, looking at them from a top level, we did come in slightly under budget, but not enough so to offset the lower state revenue that we anticipated. So
Right.
that's why the cuts were necessary towards the end of 2025. Yes, the
Towards
spend
end of the
was.
first half of the fiscal year, right?
Yep, that's right. So the spend was below budget, but not quite enough to not require cuts.
Correct.
As far as professional services go, start here and move to the next page. Professional service, student services are higher than budgeted. Legal is higher than we budgeted, and management services, those are higher than budgeted due to the transition in finance to be primarily outsourced.
Right. So some of our finance function, our AP, or I say some of the schools' finance function, just recently in the October timeframe, the AP function, the overall finance function, and the assistance with the federal grants has transitioned over to be outsourced. So that would explain some of that. On the student services,
Can I address that, Chance, for a minute?
sure. Yeah,
Just-
go ahead. Go ahead, Tom.
Just speak to that in terms of ultimately outsourcing to copper has been an overall saving. So it might be an increase in contracted services, but it's a savings in overall costs because of we've outsourced the whole department. So I just want to make sure that everyone's clear on that. So thank you.
Correct. Yeah, and that's also, and we've discussed this, that, that is not a long, we are also going to assist with bringing an internal finance director and we're going to, help with others to evaluate getting an internal finance director and then finance function. But at the moment, we are currently assisting, since that is outsourced as of, I believe, the late October timeframe. All right, Jonathan, go ahead.
That's right. As far as property services go, looking at repairs and maintenance, and then a little bit farther down at communication and technology, those respective departments, facilities for repairs and maintenance, and IT for tech and communications, they're working to reduce costs in those two arenas. And as we look at public utilities versus energy, there are the budget was built around prior year coding, and we received clarification from the auditors on appropriate coding distinction between things like water bills versus power bills. And so by the time the clarification was received, the budget was already finalized. So if we look at
right, more or less
the
the
net-
net of the two is fairly close, right?
the net of the two shows that we're under budget by $10,000.
Okay. So more or less, we had the budget more on the public utility, less on the energy. However, we received some clarification on coding, which will tend to happen. We want to make sure that these are as accurate as possible in our actuals.
That's right.
But the net of the two, if you look at them together, is fairly negligible different compared to budget and slightly under budget, which is fantastic. So
That's right. And so as far as the rest of total supplies go, we anticipate with most charter schools to see an uptick in spending on supplies at the front end of a school year to be used throughout the school year. So a lot of that is primarily due to timing, and we anticipate this normalizing closer toward the budgeted figure as the school year progresses. And on top of that, Copper is working with the school to encourage tightened spending around projects that are contained within the school to ensure we're aligning closer to the budget.
correct. One of the things that I want to make sure that it just highlights this, because we're going to talk in just a second about our fiscal 27 budgeting process. One of the things that we are on our end going to do for fiscal 27 is not just take the budget itself and more or less divide the items by. So let's say a budget of supplies and materials is $500,000, and then you divide that by 12 to do your monthly budget versus actual. I think it's more appropriate to look at your prior year over, now that we have several different years worth of data inside NetSuite here, a couple years worth, we can look at how we can normalize over the course of the fiscal year. So that way, if we typically spend 40% of our supplies budget in the first quarter of the fiscal years, then we should budget it that way for the next fiscal year to ensure that, we're not significantly over the first one quarter or even 2 quarters of the fiscal year. And all of a sudden that throws these major alarm bells whenever in actuality, if you normalize the course of the fiscal year, we typically would have more spend that way. So more analyzation of the prior data that we have inside NetSuite, and then projecting and trying to do a better job of by quarter, making sure that we're budgeting our items. But again, to echo what Jonathan said, we do typically see, start of the fiscal year, start of the school year, more money spent in supplies and materials. That's typically what we would see. So we would anticipate less in the second half of the fiscal year.
That's right. So,
and getting to our capital outlay, we see exactly what we were talking about earlier. See, if you say buildings there, anybody that's, if you typically do, accounting for any type of business, you would think, oh, we bought a building, that's a balance sheet item. But for modified accrual basis of accounting, it's an expenditure. However, I keep going back to our covenants, for our bond covenants, you are allowed to add back capital outlay for purposes of calculating the net income available for debt service. So you'll see that it's actually, but capital outlay is budgeted fairly low. However, a couple of things have our actual figures higher than the original budget for fiscal 2026. One in particular is the issuance of the bond, purchase of the Spartanburg facility. Second is there were some remaining project funds in the old 2021 bond that we were able to utilize to be able to get some capital outlay. Tom, I don't know if I can't recall exactly, but can you talk about just a couple of things we were able to do with those remaining project funds?
Yeah, as you remember, when I arrived, we had just signed the bond. Chase did such a great job opening the high school. We ended up with, I think, 1.3 in the construction portion of the bond. The primary stuff we did with that was playscapes, the parking lot at Midlands, some furniture purchases. We put, I think, 3 playscapes at the elementary school, and did some other HVAC work at the middle school. So it had to be applied to the schools that were purchased under that bond, but we were able to do significant improvements without changing a single piece of our monthly payments on our annual payments on our bond. So that was we had done that all last spring and got it all done before the start of this school year. So we put I think it was about $500,000 in paving at the Midlands. We put about $300,000 in playscapes at the elementary school, did the HVAC at the middle school. But that was all kind of responding to, and quite honestly, as you mentioned, the Spartanburg purchase, we're undergoing the construction money that was built into the purchase of Spartanburg. So we should see significant improvements in that facility, and Chase is finalizing the contractor for that process. So we should have some leftover funds to handle the playscape. We're hoping. I don't want to speak too soon on that, but if there's anything left, we'll be able to use those construction funds to contribute to the Spartanburg the building as well, because they have a pretty old and tired playscape. So as long as we use it within the building that it was intended for, whether it was 2021 or the Spartanburg purchase, it's a real benefit to the community, because as you know, the Spartanburg purchase is almost budget neutral when you come on an annualized basis. So that's about all I could say on that.
Okay, so we've talked about our capital outlay. Again, our redemption of principal and interest. So again, if you're looking at standard, business set of financials, redemption of principal, payments on principal would normally be an amount that would offset a long-term liability. But since we keep our books on the modified accrual basis of financials, our redemption of principal is an expenditure. So but we do get to add that back for purposes of our debt service net income available for debt service coverage ratio calculation. So we had higher redemption of principal, higher interest, and bond issuance costs due to the issuance of the bond in fiscal 26. Jonathan, do you have let's take a look at the balance sheet.
Absolutely. And one
Or
comment about
before
the
we
bond
start
issuance-
there, go ahead, Jonathan.
I was just say one comment about the bond issuance costs is that they were completely covered by the funds received from the issuance of the Spartanburg bond.
Correct. And the
Those are not
bond,
printed out.
the full bond that was issued, the full issuance of the bond is out there for public viewing at Emma. So you'll say that, sources and uses of the bond proceeds will cover the bond issuance costs themselves.
That's right.
Great
I have a
point.
quick
Jonathan.
question before
Yeah.
we move on. Does this encompass any of the repairs that had to be done from the vandalism of the middle school?
I
Like any
don't
of the-
believe,
I-
Scott,
I can handle that. The middle school claim was approved. The challenge of late was the issuance of the check. We had to get Hainsworth involved because Selective Insurance had to dispense the check, but because of our obligated group, they had to work with Hainsworth to put the right entity on the check. So that has been resolved. We obviously manpower was used, Mandy, and Chase was there all the time and some of that, and some citywide assistance cleaning up. But the entire project is beyond that is paid by Selective. It's an approved claim, and it should be moving. Barring the weather, should be moving expeditiously now.
I think maybe if I can just clarify, I think Mandy's question was, does this financial statement reflect any of those costs? And Mandy, the answer is no, because those invoices haven't been received yet. And obviously it will just net against the insurance proceeds. I mean, we may gross it up. I don't know that we've decided the treatment on that yet, because it's going to be a net wash to the school if the insurance company's covering it.
Okay, yep, that was my question. Thank you, Scott.
You're
Thanks.
welcome.
I've got a question. Just overall, obviously we're going to have some things where you come in over budget, some things you come in under budget. Are there any, because of course I'm not looking at the nitty gritty details, are there any things that came in high or low that are concerning? Like, did we just totally miss the mark? Did we miss budget, or did we misspend? Or did we not spend enough on something we should have? Anything that's any alarm bells in any of those numbers?
well, there are a few things. One in particular is our spend on our student services. And we've spoken with the school about that. Or I say our team has really highlighted that one as, an issue that we need to get under control. However, oftentimes student services that's spend that's necessary because of the makeup of the enrollment. We could have someone that comes in that's doing speech therapy services, or someone that's doing, some type of service that's necessary to be able to service the enrollment of the school. However, that did come in higher than was originally budgeted. But I know that, the school is really looking at that, and we're looking at the makeup of the staff that are at the school to try and best determine how to mitigate that as best as possible, still making sure that we service the students at the school, or that they get service. So I don't know, Scott or Dawn or Tom, if y'all want to kind of echo in on that one. I know that's one that we've seen that has been historically one that's higher than we would like to see. But
Yeah,
if it's necessary,
it is.
then
A couple things to note. Obviously, any student with a presenting challenge is also an increase in revenue. We also have to have a blind lottery, and that's why in some ways Dawn reviewed our staffing pattern and our scheduling rubric to make sure we're doing a more efficient job of planning and preparing and supporting students who are unique learners. So that's really what is a larger expense than because the needs of those students are more significant. So we're looking at ways we can do it more efficiently, but ensure that we meet every student's particular learning needs. So that's a little more complex challenge, but I do think that we're looking at different ways systematically and system-wide to create a greater shared responsibility and a better way to schedule to ensure the student needs are met.
'Cause these are, that's for like outsourced, like physical therapy, speech therapy, occupational therapy, which under federal law has to be provided to these
Yes.
students.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're seeing if we can find ways to, do that more efficiently. The challenge we face is, one challenge we face on that is just the pure geography of Greene. We're all across the state, so there's times where we really can't have anything but a contracted service because it's a small school with a small need. So that's what we're trying to work on. As you know, we hired our own school psychologist to offset, the significant testing demands. With over 400 special needs students, that's about a third of them have to have a triennial review, which is, an extensive process. So that, you're talking 140 or so assessments every year. So those are, that's going to be missed a little bit because we don't know who we're going to get. We're going to try to do a better job of projecting that going forward. Obviously, next year, the only real increase we're going to have is kind of the full 7th to 8th at Simpsonville. Other than that, it's just mainly enrolling in the first grade of the school, kindergarten, 6th or 9th grade. So we might have a better sense of the needs of the kids because, as you know, the last 3 years, we've added over approximately 300 kids each year, which, it's hard to anticipate the range of needs of that large of a population of students.
Can I chime in real quick? Chance, did you say historically we've overspent in that area? Like last year, the year before?
I believe I can follow up with you on that one. I would need to go and look at the budget that was prepared for last year for fiscal 2024. But I would like to say, I would lean towards saying yes, that we would typically see that.
Okay. And if that's the case, and Tom, if it's justified that this is what we need to meet the students' needs, then maybe we need to budget a little bit higher in that area and reduce something elsewhere. Just my thought, because we want to make sure that, we are focusing on, the best student outcome and everybody getting the services that they need. So just wanted to mention that. But yeah, Chance, that would be great to include that too. Maybe we just need to budget a little bit higher in that and look at other ways to save.
And that's also why we continue to advocate for a more appropriate funding formula, right? Because not all kids with special needs are of equal need, so that's part of what, we have to do. So even Chance and I talk about that a lot. I know he's working on that with legislatures. I met with a legislator recently. So I do think that equity in funding is still a challenge for that, but I appreciate that sentiment a lot. Stephanie.
Well, and I appreciate the work you guys do advocating too. Thank you.
Okay, where are we?
Sorry.
No, sorry, I'm just trying to figure out. I think the question was, any items of spend. So that is a really good question. I think is going to lead really well into our plan for fiscal 27 too. Yes, there are some individual items. I know that one was our cleaning and janitorial services that that had been budgeted for a certain amount, and then the do you have that, Jonathan? Actually, that's fairly close, not too far off. But a number of these, a number of the contracts, I know we're going to, in our fiscal 27 budgeting process, that'll be the next thing that we talk about. Now that we have our numbers through the first half of the fiscal year, January is certainly a time that I like to go back and look and see, and see if we can kind of more or less extrapolate the rest of the fiscal year, do a solid forecast, and then use that to kind of start what we would anticipate, our some of our revenue landing, and then we can use that to kind of benchmark our various individual items underneath that. Sorry, was that you, Jonathan?
Nope.
Yes. Oh,
Good.
sorry. Does that make sense, Triska?
It does. Like I said, I'm just making sure there's no major red flags because I mean, obviously not overspending, but over budget or under budget can all be red flags. So perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, the big thing this year, as we've discussed, I mean, the enrollment being budgeted at 3110 and then coming in at 29 and 23. I mean, that's a nearly 200 student miss. And then there are I think a couple of links need to be, we can get these links posted in the, on the Green site. One is going to be revenue. They're a statewide report, or they're reports that are out there that show each individual district and how much revenue those districts receive, local, state, and federal, for basically by pupil. And you'll see how Greenville County School District will compare to the overall South Carolina Public Charter School District, or charter schools, in total. And what we're seeing is for fiscal 25, I believe it was about $12,900 on average per pupil. And so if that, with approximately or roughly 200 students in a miss, that creates a fairly significant miss in terms of revenue, which is why we've had to make, or why the school has had to make some mid-year adjustments. But that's probably the biggest, if I were to say of anything that was a miss this year, is the enrollment. And other items. I mean, we have just on the screen here, we've had more in terms of management services, but again, we in shifting some of the responsibility for the finance department and finance over. But we also have, I mean, legal fees is significant as well. And I know I know that maybe Tom can speak to how we've engaged our legal counsel over the course of the fiscal year. I know there was some work around the bond and various other things, but that is fairly significant as well. And all these reports will be posted on the site as well for everyone to be able to see. So Tom, some of our,
I can only, I mean, obviously there's.
oh, I guess we can't talk.
Yeah, that's really not, that we, we've had to use our attorney at different times. And obviously, as Jonathan was saying, everything for the new bond was paid for through the bond itself. So those could be student matters, they could be personnel matters. It's really, but as you know, we have a great legal team at Haynesworth. So, and all that's broken out by, whatever issue it is. So we can do maybe a better job of projecting that in the future.
Stephanie, Trishka, Mandy, any other questions before we move on to the balance sheet? Okay.
I'm sorry.
Jonathan?
I just want to move back to because I think I missed this. What did you say was in other supplies and materials for that budget?
Other supplies and materials.
Yeah,
Um,
in the other category.
I think, Chance, if you remember, that was the National School Lunch Program and other things in there. I think that's what she was getting at. Right, Stephanie? It's like 1.7.
No. There's $96,000.
Yeah, 96,000. Yep.
So I can. I'm not so sure exactly. I can go if you want. What I can do is go back to the original budget as drafted and see what items are in that 96,000. It does look like, though, that with such little spend, I'm glad to see very little in actual $325 and other. So
Yeah.
that $325 we could most likely dig into and see how we could. I mean, that could just need to be a supplies and material line item at 410, and then the 96,000. So one of the things that we can do, or probably that we can suggest to the board, is an updated forecast for fiscal 26, taking into account the revenue that we know or that we can anticipate based on the enrollment, and then based on some of the adjustments in the salaries and benefits and that type of thing, where we think fiscal 26 can land. And then the board can always do go through and approve an updated budget. And so that could be where this 96,000 can get moved to the supplies and materials line item at object code 410. That might be a really good idea. That way it looks less, it actually would look fairly close to budget if that were to happen. So that's a good question, Stephanie.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
thank
had a
you.
question about that line 410. I mean, is that stuff that is going directly to teachers and students? The supplies and materials, is that what that is accounted for? Because it looks like it's a significant difference. And I mean, I would assume that supplies and materials are things that are going into classrooms. Like, can you tell me what that actually means?
Well, one of the things we can certainly do is provide for every individual item object code on here, we can provide the GL detail. I think that's a good idea, Jonathan, as we provide the financials.
Yeah, because it exists, right? This is just an overview. I mean, I think that's one complaint that a lot of people have had is that these are high level categories and that we don't see like, well, what is a supply and material? Because that could be anything from bricks to textbooks has its own, but paper, I know paper is a material. So
Yeah, exactly. Items like paper would certainly be in there, but I think that that's a good, it would be good to provide the full-on GL detail for that so that you all can see exactly what goes into that. But Jonathan, I know some of the supplies and materials in there would be items that we would purchase that would be federal reimbursable type items.
Right.
And yeah, I think it would be really good for Mandy for us to provide the GL detail for you on that one to let you know exactly. Unless Jonathan, you want to give us a couple of examples of items we'd code the supplies and materials.
I can
Yeah,
chime in on this. The biggest item is $92,000 of stipends.
That's right. That's right, man. So like when we have, so
Just
teachers
supply.
get a supply check. So when the teachers get their supply check, that runs through supplies and materials as well. That's how it's coded to object code 410 in the financials. That's how it's reported in the audit. So the largest portion of that is the money that is paid. So we receive, or the school receives the money, and it's more or less where the school is a conduit from the district. So the school receives the money, the school pays it out to the teacher. So over 90,000 of that is teacher stipend money.
So just so everyone's aware, the state issues, I think it's a $400 check. Dawn would probably be better to explain this, but we don't hold any of that. We push it all out to the teacher. So each teacher got an additional $400 toward that.
Teacher supply money, right?
To teacher supply money. Is that correct, Dawn? I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, they receive $400. Well, the state sets the amount each year. So they receive $400 in the first week, the teacher planning days of school, in order to purchase supplies for their classrooms or whatever it is that they might need for the year.
and that makes sense.
Yeah, just one more thing, Chance. I think with the board, when we do the regular board meetings, I think it would be really good. I understand why we have to do this, but I know a lot of what is in this, but I think it would be really good for stakeholders to elaborate, even if it's a note at the bottom of the financial statement, what the stuff is in the other categories, so that that's clear.
Yeah, sure. I think that's a great idea. I mean, we have like, example, miscellaneous purchase services, there's 0 in there. We have the other supplies and materials, very little. So, but then we have other property services, and I know what that is, but that specifically doesn't meet any of our other object codes. So 100%, we can add, we can have note, and then down at the bottom, explain what that is, provide the GL detail, whatever is going to, whatever's the finance committee and the board would like to see, certainly.
Every object code has a definition, right? Chance?
The object code, yeah, there are requirements for us to be able to post certain things to certain object code according to the South Carolina the finance manual.
The mapping.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, it would be great I feel like we see such high level stuff. It would be great for us to be able to see the GL detail there. I think that's a great idea. So we can understand what's in these categories too.
Right. The other thing Jonathan just mentioned here is that one of the things we're also going to be sending over to you all is not only the consolidated financials here that are done by object code, but then we also want to look at this by a function. And Jonathan, you want to explain real quickly, by the main thing when it comes to function that on a high level I look at, especially as we approach audit, or our 100 versus 200 to see how much, our expenditures per instruction and expenditures per support.
That's
But
right.
we'll have, it would be good for you all, because that's how the budget was really done. Those budgets that were like 38, whatever pages long, are budgeted individual expenditures by function. So it'll be things like 111 function. I'm drawing up. So 233
Kindergarten.
function would be like school admin, Jonathan, that type of thing.
Yep.
So overall overview like this, and then the more or less P&L, statement of revenue expenditures by function, would be another great report that we'll submit to you all with some detail, and then as much elaboration or explanation on it as well. That would be really great for for you all to get and then be able to post online.
Right. And it provides a little bit more insight on what is actually included in each of these categories. So
Right.
it's a separate dimension on what were the funds truly spent on.
Yeah. So just so everyone, I mean, we really, the dimension, when Jonathan says dimensions, we really are, items are being coded by fund. So you will have general fund and then various federal funds and some state restricted funds, that type of thing. So fund, and then our function would be like our school administration, learning disabilities, that type of thing. And then our object code would be the thing that we're just talking about now. Object code is more or less a general ledger GL code for 10 supplies, for 20 textbooks, that type of thing. So I think sending them over consolidated in this fashion, but also some breakdown in detail with notes would be really would be very helpful. So that was certainly something that we can provide to the finance committee, the board, and then again, it can be posted online.
I really like that budget by function too, because it's our success is based on the services that we provide and how effective is that. So I really like that idea. I didn't know that was an option in there. Is that a NetSuite thing, or is that something that you guys put together?
No,
Something
it's typically, the accounting system. I know, like in a number of our clients, we use QuickBooks, so they'll still be able to report that same type of functionality. The school moving to NetSuite really allows for there to be that type of, you can drill down by fund, by function, by object code, and even location modifiers for the various subsidiaries of the school. So just provides an additional ability to be able to drill down to various figures. But yeah, that reporting function is certainly something that we can do, present to the finance committee and to the board.
Great, thank you so much.
Jonathan, we want to take a glance at the balance sheet.
Sounds great.
Here's our balance sheet. A couple things here. We finished December 31st with a little over $2.6 million in cash in the bank. We have some various receivables and due from this. When you see due from district there, that's like items that we have. Those are items that we've claimed to be received back from the district. We have some money that's due from state. A portion of that, over $300,000, we anticipate receiving in the next couple of 3 weeks related to some planning and implementation grant. We have, let's see, when we are looking at our bond funds down there, one thing that we just recently did was the money that was in the debt service reserve fund, which is required to be out there in your restricted bond funds, was just analyzed, and there was some money we were able to move over into the actual bond payment, the actual bond funds themselves. So it will reduce the amount that the school actually has to pay in their bond in January, which will save some operating cash. Roughly, I think, Scott, we've looked at roughly maybe 140 on one bond and 40 on the other.
That's right.
What that relates to is that, so when you have a bond out there, you have to have a debt service reserve fund, or most, I think any that I've seen, you have to have a debt service reserve fund, which is funded from the bond proceeds. However, as that is able to gather any type of maybe interest or investment income, it can, if it does get income in it, you can sweep that over to the actual bond account, which would reduce your monthly pay or reduce the payment that you have to make. So we've just recently analyzed that, and we're going to be able to save the school some operating cash by sweeping, and I believe it was already done today, Scott, sweeping some of the excess money that was in the debt service reserve fund into the operating cash. So the school's accounts payable is fairly significant at the moment. However, with some of the federal money that we anticipate receiving fairly soon, the planning and implementation P&I grant money that we anticipate receiving fairly soon, the school anticipates being able to knock down the current bills and the accounts payable fairly significantly in the very near future. Right, Scott? That's what we're on pace for, right?
That's exactly right.
Okay, fantastic. Jonathan, let's scroll down some. One of the things here, due to green, we have a little bit of money due to some accrued. So we do have an amount pulled on our line of credit as of December 31st. However, one of the things that we're also going to work on, Stephanie and Trishka and Mandy, is a more or less a cash flow projection. So we need to anticipate being able to meet, because the two things I talked about in the most recent board meeting, we talked about a couple of things. One is the bond covenants that we have. The two that are out there is our debt service coverage ratio and our days cash on hand. Days cash on hand cannot be inclusive of any bond funds that are out there that are restricted. So we're more or less looking at active, operating, unrestricted, unassigned operating cash. And what we do is we take the overall expenditures, we reduce those expenditures by our redemption of principal and capital outlay. We take that, divide by 365, and then we analyze the amount of available cash. The school's or days cash on hand covenant is 45 days cash on hand is the requirement. So I do believe that with the reduction in force that was done, with a few, we have to really kind of analyze things, but we are seeing that the school could trend in a direction to meet their days cash on hand and their debt service coverage ratio by the end of fiscal 2026. That's certainly an opportunity. We'll provide the updated forecast. Jonathan and Scott will work on that, and then the board can actually determine whether or not to do a full-on updated revised budget, which I would suggest. It be good to post to Emma. The investors would like to see that, and it would show that where we anticipate landing the fiscal year. Any questions?
Thank
None
you,
for
Chance. I
Brian.
have to say thank you. It's just great working with all of you guys at Copper. Thank you.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Any questions? Any information needed? We'll be providing a bunch of. We will send over. The consolidated audit is now done. Again, the consolidated audit is done. So the fiscal 24, fiscal 25 consolidated audits will both be posted.
Can I
online.
take a second chance to explain that?
Sure,
So
go ahead.
part of what happened over the last two audit seasons is we worked with Copper and Baird and our bondholders, which are mainly Vanguard at this point. And really, our requirements by law are to do a full audit for each charter. But since we are an obligated group, it was decided and determined last winter to do a consolidated audit, not required by law, but very useful to our bondholders that understand it more represents how we're structured as a obligated group. So we did that last year. That was well received. That did not have to meet the legal requirement of meeting the audit deadline, but it's a very useful tool for us to look at the overall health and well-being of the overall green. So the bondholders were really grateful for that. Baird, it was really, I think, between Chance and Brian at Baird said this would be a much more useful tool. So it does give a more global perspective about green. I don't know if Chance wants to elaborate on that, but it isn't required, but it's a very useful to our bondholders.
Yes, the consolidate that it certainly is, because the investors and bondholders would because of again the bond attorney provides there's good information that he has out there on the concept of the consolidated group, the consolidated obligated group. But yes, it's great to be able to see from an overall perspective all the schools together. And so we'll get fiscal 24. Now that fiscal 25 is out there, we'll get both those audits posted, along with all of the individual audits as well. So that way everybody can see every audit for each of the individual, I don't want to say individual schools, because the green audit is inclusive of the elementary and middle because of that charter. But all of the individual audits are where we can post them, inclusive of the consolidated audits. And I know also on the agenda is that is talking about the fiscal 27 budgeting process. So we have numbers through December. We really the updated forecast that we're going to do, inclusive of the reduction in force, inclusive of the other things, the where we anticipate the state revenue landing for fiscal 26 is where we're going to start the process for our fiscal 27. And I will be going to meet with each of the individual schools as we sit down to talk about, where we anticipate the revenue landing based on our anticipated enrollment, which is going to need to be a very conservative figure. And then we'll talk about the areas where, of spend for fiscal 26 year to date. And then we'll talk about some of the, we want to make sure the biggest thing is, where the school expends their funds is really should be a reflection of the purpose, right? So when we sit down with every one of these principals and every one of the leadership at the school, we want to make sure that and then as that rolls up and as the board approves the overall budget, we want to make sure that that is absolutely reflective of the purpose of Green Charter as a network. So that really starts now, where I start, because I always do, a kind of a base estimate where I anticipate our base revenue landing and our state aid to classroom funds and that type of thing. So we really start there, and then we're going to look at how we're going to, how we'll be able to calculate our various, overall salaries and benefits as a percentage of revenue, make sure that kind of is close to where we want our metric, and then really do we really want to do a very good job this year of being very conservative in our numbers, both enrollment and revenue, and then monitoring very closely. So.
This is where Chance and I are extremely aligned, in that a budget is a values document. As you know, the last couple of years, we put together a summary as to what the budget accomplishes. And I think that's where, Chance and I kind of do this together and work with our site managers, we'll be able to really identify those key accomplishments that are embedded within the projected or the proposed budget for FY27.
I wanted to chime in a minute on this too. I know a lot of us have been patiently waiting for the principals to be able to have budgets. And from my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, we're kind of waiting on setting up training before they get in there and all that. But I feel like, is there anything that we can do for now? Give them even like a PDF of budget versus actual for their campus, so they know where they're at, because they're on the front lines. And I would love to be able for them to have something to work with. I mean, we're, halfway through right now. Is there any way we could put something like that together soon so the principals can see their budgets for the services?
Absolutely. What you just saw is a consolidated report. We now have the ability, we can run that exact report by subsidiary, which is every individual location. And so those reports by location can be issued to everyone. And I like that, because I love, we need to be getting, questions as well. Hey, this particular
Yes.
line item here, it's budgeted for X, and then I see the spend amount is this amount, what all is in there. I love those questions, because that gives us an opportunity to really dig in and to make sure that, this needs to be very much on an ongoing basis, a very, top down sending the reports, and then them also kicking it back up and saying, hey, I want some more detail around these various things. And then as the board, that would also be an excellent opportunity for the leaders at the schools to be able to say, hey, for the 96 that you referenced earlier, they could say, hey, we have this individual amount that's budgeted here, but, I'd like to kick that up to, whatever our supplies line, on our updated budget that we're going to present. So, and again, the board, I would suggest taking the updated projections, our actual thus far, and then analyzing and approving an updated budget for our fiscal 26 based on those projections and forecasts. But to answer your question, absolutely. By individual subsidiary, by location, all of these reports can be issued to the leadership, and I think that they should get them and be looking at them.
Okay, Tom, could we do that soon? We maybe go through the end of December, I guess, since that just recently closed out.
Yeah, well,
That with Chance.
well, Scott and I have been working on this. He presented with the principals, I think it was just Tuesday, Scott, or was it the Tuesday before, right?
I think it was the Tuesday before.
And we're rolling out a Divvy card, which allows principals to spend down from that. So different allotments are being put on that. That just rolled out in the last week or so. So with this, year-end report, and Scott kind of working with the principals on, their spend and how they can use the Divvy card, that training is ongoing. It just occurred in the last couple of weeks. So Copper has made a tremendous amount of progress since taking over the as I said, they're drinking from a fire hydrant. But I think that, the purchases have been great. The entire team has been very responsive. Jonathan, I hear compliments about you all the time. So we're making really good progress. And Scott and I meet every 2 weeks to go over bill pay and all that. So a lot of improvements have happened just, I'd say, in the last 2 months. So that will be, we can even share this year-end summary and give them a projection for the rest of the year. That's what Chance was referring to earlier, is how we build out that projection.
Yeah, that would be great. So what's a reasonable time frame, do you think, Scott and Tom, to be able to have that ready for principals, like your next principal meeting? Could it be ready by then?
Scott, you want to handle that?
Yeah, sure, no problem. Yeah, I mean, we were waiting just to see what shook out of this call essentially, but we have December's wrapped up at this point. So I told Tom, I think we can have that to the principals this afternoon or maybe first thing Monday.
That would be awesome. Thank you.
Of course.
Better is better, Stephanie.
That's right.
Making progress. So I'll just summarize the rollout of FY27. It's going to be an iterative process. We're going to have those elbow-to-elbow conversations. Dawn's going to use that scheduling rubric and staffing rubric, and that will all roll out. Obviously, facility costs and staffing costs are 85, 90% of our budget. After that, it becomes about how we purchase services, how we pay for other improvements across the system, how we capitalize some purchases. So, but most of our budget is, between facilities and staffing, 85 to 90% of our budgeting. So, as you know, we keep a thin administrative team across the network to ensure that we keep class size reasonable and those relationships between student and teachers primary. So I think the lesson learned from this year is to ensure that we budget more conservatively, so we have a good problem in that we need more teachers, not we need to reduce staff. So that's part of the lesson learned. And I'm really grateful to have Copper alongside me in developing that.
Okay, thanks. I just got another question on so Chance, did I hear you correctly saying it sounds like we should be caught up with our vendors by the end of the fiscal year 26?
I'm sorry, repeat that. I just stepped out for a second.
Maybe this is something else. Sorry. When will we be caught up with catching up with vendor payments through that line of credit? Do you think the end of fiscal year 26?
I anticipate certainly by the end of fiscal 26. Again, we have Jonathan, Scott, I mean, between just the planning and implementation grant receivable that we know we'll get in the next several weeks, and then the reimbursements that we just claimed, I mean, that's over $700,000. And then again, going back to, one of the things that is a challenge for any school that has a growth in enrollment, even if it wasn't the number that we wanted to hit, was that our first 2 months of the fiscal year were funded based on our fiscal 135-day count for 2024. So we're going to be receiving higher revenue. We're going to be getting our federal reimbursements very soon. We're going to be getting our reimbursement, I would imagine, any time now, Jonathan, Scott, with our P&I planning and implementation grant money for the Simpsonville planning and implementation. So, I mean, yes, I would absolutely anticipate prior to the end of fiscal 2026, we will be caught up.
So
the school.
hopefully, maybe in a month or two, you think maybe then?
I think what would be great for me to be able to answer that question better for you would be to get is to get an update, is to get a full-on cash flow projection done. But from everything that I'm seeing, especially with analyzing where the bond project funds are, I mean, it's been tough sledding for a little bit, but I do anticipate that, with the full line of credit in place, with some of the things that we know are going to be coming in terms of reimbursements, yes, I would anticipate certainly before the end of this fiscal year, but maybe in a couple of 3 months, we will be back square.
So I'd like to just touch on that. So those who are listening in know that the P&I grant is a 3-year competitive grant that Catherine Watt wrote and secured for Simpsonville. That was a $900,000 grant, of which we have to spend it before we get it back. This is year 3 of that grant. The beautiful furniture at Simpsonville was paid for already by Green, and we're awaiting that reimbursement. The other part that Chance hasn't mentioned today is we also have a reimbursement due to us through a collaboration with our Simpsonville landlord, because we've been paying taxes, and that has now been fully approved. So it's approximately $350,000 in owed tax revenue that we're going to get reimbursed on, but that will have to be a collaboration between us and the landlord at how they're going to restore and repay us that overpayment, because obviously they pay the taxes. But myself and the people at Haynesworth secured a commitment from the state. So all the way back to when we first got in the building is now going to be reimbursed. So that's another part of reducing our monthly expenses over hopefully the rest of this fiscal year, which will also add what Chance is saying as far as less cash going out, allowing us to get caught up on all vendors. I have to also say that Scott has been, and Jonathan, but I'll say Scott, because I work every 2 weeks with him on this, and in getting those vendors caught up and getting that, slowly from inside 60 days to inside 45 days. So we've tried to get that. So securing the line of credit gave Copper some more flexibility on that. And those other 3, both what the Chance just said and the P&I grant and the tax relief, should also help, going forward.
I just want to make sure too that there's like a triage of priority. I personally think it should be top priority for things that directly affect the students, like some of these outside services, like the psychology stuff and all that. I just want to make sure that that's being looked at in like a triage fashion of priority with things like that.
Yeah, I can speak to that, Stephanie. I mean, certainly the student service providers, we don't want them walking out on any of the students and the schools, obviously. So they are at the top of our list. I know supplies are being worked on as well. Obviously paying the bonds and paying rent and payroll are obviously highest priority as well.
Thank you.
There aren't many low priority, Stephanie. I'll just say that.
True. Thank you. Does anybody else have any other questions?
I don't.
Okay, so I guess, this is a bit new, so I don't know if we need like a motion to move to executive session. I guess we're ready to move on to that.
Yes, we do need a motion to move into executive session.
Okay. I guess I could do the motion to move into
yeah.
executive session. I don't know. if
I'll make the
Please do it.
motion. Yeah.
Thank you, thank you. Do we need a second? I guess
We do. You can second it.
okay. Just writing down my notes here. Okay, so, the finance committee folks, we're gonna move into executive session now. As far as everybody else on the call, we're gonna head out now, and then we're gonna come back when we're done with executive session to discuss, we're gonna discuss personal matters and contractual negotiations.
Stephanie?
uh,
Stephanie,
yeah.
I don't think we come back to this meeting. I don't think in committee, we hadn't done that in the past.
Oh, okay. So we're done with this. We're gonna move into executive session and then adjourn, because we're not voting on anything or anything like
Exactly. There's no
Yeah,
actionable
that.
item.
Yeah, there's no action. Okay. All right, well, thank you.
Just a reminder that you have to exit out of this meeting to go into executive session.
Yes,
I want to keep 2 meetings open is all I'm suggesting.
yes, yes. Thank you, Tom. Anything else we should add, Mandy, before we leave?
No, I think that takes care of it.
Okay, thank you so much. So I'm gonna mark that the meeting is, we're leaving at 2:17. Okay, yep, so if everybody could just hop out of here and I'll see the committee back in executive session in a few minutes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody.